Good evening. The City of Plymouth Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, February 20th, 2025 is now called to order. Members of the public not attending in person may submit written public comment prior to the meeting by emailing your comment to the Planning Commissioner Secretary at dknight@cityofplymouth.org before 3:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Email public comments will be distributed to the Commission and made part of the official record. This meeting will be recorded. Council chambers are wheelchair accessible. Special accommodations may be requested by contacting the Commission Secretary 72 hours in advance of the meeting. Please silence all cell phones or similar devices. And can we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Clapper.
Present.
Commissioner Shaw is absent. Vice Chair Sullivan.
Present.
Chair Mickelson.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2, which is the approval of the Planning Commission regular meeting agenda for February 20th, 2025. We have a motion for the agenda.
I'll move that we approve the letter. And second?
And roll call, please.
Commissioner Clapper.
Yes.
Vice Chair Sullivan.
Yes.
Chair Mickelson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, item 3, public comment. Under the provisions of the California Code, citizens wishing to address the Commission for any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time by completing and submitting a speaker submittal form to the Planning Commission Secretary while following the instructions noted on the agenda. Speakers will be called by the chair at the point of the agenda when the item will be heard. Speakers should keep comments to 3 minutes or less and state their name and community of reference. Under the provisions of the California Government Code, the Commission is prohibited from materially discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda, unless it can be demonstrated to be of emergency nature or an urgent need to take immediate action arose after the posting of the agenda. And looks like we do have a speaker card for 6.1. And any other public comments?
It's for items on.
Oh, this guy screwed up. First timer.
No, you're.
Perfect. We will close public comment. And we move to item 4, which is presentations and appointments. 4.1, newly appointed commissioners to take office.
Meeting's up. Just a little bit more that way. Thank you so much. All right. So raise your right hand and repeat after me, please. I state your name, do solemnly swear
I, Don Sullivan, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will and well and faithfully
and that I will and well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, item 4.2, selection of a new planning commission chair and vice chair. So do we have any nominations for a chairperson? I have a nomination.
I don't know. I nominate Mike Sullivan for chair.
Any other nominations? Then I will, do we need to do a resolution or just second it and go for the vote?
You don't even need a second, you can just go straight to a vote.
Okay, then we'll do a roll call for the chairperson. Mike Sullivan?
All right, Commissioner Mickelson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Clapper.
Yes, but it's not vice chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not yet.
Sorry about that. I messed this up. How about we start over? Commissioner Clapper,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sullivan,
I guess, yes.
Chair Mickelson.
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mike. I'm going to move that stuff over.
You can just move the gavel over, I'll stop it. You just- No, just give me the gavel.
No, you have to leave them on. Can anybody leave theirs on?
What's that?
Does Tom have to leave his on or just anybody's?
I think anybody's, but.
Okay.
All right. So we moved on to the nomination for vice chair. Since seemed to be subliminally suggested earlier, I would nominate Bill Klaproth for vice chair of the planning commission. You have a second?
We have a final second.
And a vote.
So. Commissioner Clapper,
Yes.
Commissioner Mickelson,
Yes.
Chair Sullivan.
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes.
All right, on to number 5, consent calendar items. All matters listed under the consent calendar are to be considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. If discussion is required, that particular item will be removed from the consent calendar and will be considered separately. So under the consent calendar, we have 5.1, which is the approval of the planning commission regular meeting minutes from December 19th, 2024. Is there anyone who would like to make any public comment on this item? Did we get any written public comment for this item, Madam Clerk?
No, we did not.
Right, I'll close public comment. And can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the planning commission regular meeting, talking about the minutes, right?
Yes.
No, the regular minutes of December 19th, 2024.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Mickelson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Clapper,
Yes.
Chair Sullivan.
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes.
All right, now we're moving on to 6.1, which is public hearings. And the first is adopt a resolution of the planning commission of the city of Plymouth denying an appeal and upholding the determination of the planning director that indoor smoking in conjunction with the commercial establishment or use is not a permitted use in the city of Plymouth zoning ordinance, or adopt a resolution of the planning commission of the city of Plymouth approving an appeal and reversing the determination of the planning director that indoor smoking in conjunction with a commercial establishment or use is not a permitted use in the city of Plymouth zoning ordinance. So our next move is to hold a public hearing. Erica, do you have anything to report on this?
I do, yes. Let's stand with it. To give you a little bit of background on why we're here tonight. On November 4th, the Cedarsville applied for a business license to operate a retail tobacco store that included indoor smoking. When uses come in, we do check to make sure that they're allowed, so that's standard operating procedure for any use to make sure it's allowed in the zoning district that it's being requested. Upon reviewing the request, I determined that indoor smoking is not permitted and is not listed as permitted use in the zoning ordinance, and therefore isn't allowed. Transmitted that determination in writing to the applicant or the business owner. And then, as notified in their letter, they have the opportunity to appeal my decision to bring to you. And so they did so on January 25th, so that's why we're here tonight. So the business owners appealed for several reasons. One being that I misclassified the use. The second being that they've secured their permits from the state of California. That smoking is accessory use to their business operations, and that indoor smoking or smoking lounges typically offer with the sale of tobacco, with the sale of cigars is offered. It's a typical use that goes to them. So the planning director is charged with determining whether or not a use is approved, conditionally approved, or a similar use in accordance with the zoning ordinance. When we get a business or a question or whatever the case may be, the first step we always look is what is their zoning district? And within that zoning district, what does the zoning ordinance tell them? Most of the time, it's pretty straightforward and it's easy. For example, it will say restaurant. Restaurant is pretty easy to determine. However, sometimes there is a use that is not specifically listed, but when you open the definition to the use, that when you go look through the definitions, that use becomes very similar. And the code does allow the director to make the determination that if a use is similar, that the director can then approve it. So for example, under retail use, it doesn't list every retail use ever imagined, but within those parameters of those uses that are listed under the definition, you can usually find one that's very similar. So we'll consider that similar. And sometimes the definition is just a very broad definition that we use to then allow for some uses. So I think my example is was a flower shop is not specifically listed, but that is a retail use. Within our zoning ordinance, there is no use that allows smoking of any nature. Smoking is a distinct use. Within the definitions, there is no definition that is similar in any nature to smoking. So based on that criteria, we had to deny the use. Now there's two issues with the use that is not listed or is not similar. One is if I allow a use that is not listed on our use list, and I say it's not on our use list, therefore it's permitted, then that means that other uses that are not on that use list are permitted. So for example, our zoning ordinance does not have a prohibition on adult establishments, so then they would be allowed. So that starts to set precedents where it becomes harder to deny other uses. The second being that if I allow smoking, while it might seem interesting for this use, it's going to be allowed then. So in whatever way, if I had allowed it, it would be allowed for someone else. So if Big Bar moved out tomorrow, Hookah Lounge could move in. I can't just allow use for one business and one business only. So that's why anything we do tonight does set a precedence. Next slide. The applicants applied for their required licenses. While that's beneficial to him, the state licensing requirements does not supersede local permitting or zoning requirements. Smoking is ancillary to the use. While that may be the case, Smoking is not a listed use again, and our list of allowable uses under the accessory use definition are very quite specific, and it doesn't fall within those categories. And typically you do not consider a use that could have impacts on a neighboring business as an ancillary use. For example, and when smoking is allowed, smoking would be allowed, so if they did it on a patio and there's residential units nearby, or if it was conducted in some other sort of fashion where there'd be impacts, you don't typically allow those as ancillary uses because there's no way to limit them. The business owner stated that smoking is typically offered with cigar sales. I have seen in some cities, very few, that yes, there is a lounge associated with cigar sales. However, those cities specifically allow for it within their use list. He did submit letters in favor of his business, which are included in the staff report. And, next slide, please. So, just in case, because you do have some options, so included within your staff report, and I'll discuss it here. I wanted to take a brief look at what do other cities do. Most cities are moving towards prohibiting smoking of any fashion, so they are amending their code to prohibit them within apartments and other types of dwellings. But the state of California really does not have any regulations that would apply to this business. So while they need a license, there's no requirements for percentage of space, like a zoning requirement or ventilation requirements. And as I mentioned, most cities do prohibit indoor smoking. Now, there are some that do allow it. In reviewing their regulations, the way they've established the regulations for smoking uses is there's usually a requirement for conditional use permit. There's usually a requirement for it can't be so much of the space, so it's limited to a percentage. It is usually limited to a specific zoning district. And they usually include requirements for operations. So they do vary, and there's some listed in your staff report, but it's usually a requirement for ventilation, or if someone is visiting one portion of the facility, they don't have to go through the smoking room to buy a cigar or whatever the case may be, to allow for some separation. They all vary, they're all different, but those are some of the common uses that we see. And then for the most part, most cities either specifically do prohibit it, so they will say no smoking is allowed, and then a lot of cities actually just do not allow it, and it's not allowed because it's not listed as an allowed use. So it is kind of all over the place, but there are, like, as I mentioned, there are some cities that do allow it within a specific zoning district, usually in the downtown area or specific commercial district. So in conclusion, I determined that indoor smoking was not listed as a permitted use in the zoning ordinance, and therefore was not allowed. I determined that while not listed, it is also not similar to any other uses that we allow in the city, and not similar to any of the definitions that we have. The applicant or the business owner did appeal the decision, and that's before you tonight. And staff does have concerns with allowing smoking with no regulations could negatively impact the city, as well as depending on how we go tonight, there could be some repercussions for any determination that you might make. So for example, if we're determining that a use not listed on the permitted list is a permitted use, there are other uses that can come in. So you actually do have 4 options at least, and you can come up with any other options should you wish to. So staff's recommended option would be to adopt a resolution denying an appeal, upholding my decision on the use. That can be appealed to the city council should the business owner wish to. You can also adopt a resolution, approving the appeal and reversing my decision. And for that one, in your staff report, there's a blank resolution and we'll fill it out together based on what your determination is. You could also, if you thought that this is an interesting and unique use and you would like to have it in the city, but you agree that there should be some parameters or it should be specifically listed, you can deny the appeal, but then direct me to amend the municipal code to allow for indoor smoking. And then within that option, you would direct me on how you want it to be, let's say, worded. Permitted use, conditionally permitted use, just permitted. The permitted with some requirements, conditional use permitted with some requirements. And then your other option is if there's more information that you would like, if there's any other clarification that you need to make a decision, you can select that option. We continue the item to another hearing and staff will bring back that information. That concludes my presentation. I know the appellant is here, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them for staff before you talk to them.
So absent amending the municipal code, is there a way to approve this with a conditional use permit with specific?
The mechanism by which a conditional use permit is offered is specific and it's specific to uses once again. So again, it's not in compliance with the municipal code and it would set a precedence that other uses are conditionally permitted uses. The use list in any zoning ordinance in any city is a vetted use list. So that has gone through, hopefully, some sort of scrutiny where when the use list is created, you think about the area in which a project occurs, let's say, and what you want to encourage within that area. So for example, in a single family residential zoning district, typically, except not in the city, multifamily uses aren't allowed because you're keeping it at single family. In a multifamily zoning district, the one we just did, we specifically prohibited single family residential dwellings because we want to encourage multifamily. So use is usually crafted based on what you want to see. And then identifying that there are some uses that are unique and might be interesting. And you would like to allow them, such as a bar in the downtown area. But you want to look at the operation characteristics because there could be potential negative impacts on a surrounding home or other business. If the bar was to, I don't know, operate a beer garden in the backyard and there's some apartments behind them or whatever the case may be. So then in those cases where you identify that there could be potential conflicts or negative impacts, you require a conditional use permit, which allows us to both place conditions of approval on their project regulating their business, but also offers us a path for revocation should they not comply with those.
I don't know if you could answer this question, but if a cigar lounge was an approved use, would it automatically allow smoking within there, or would it be set up that way?
So in my experience, most times it doesn't call it a cigar lounge, it is called indoor smoking. If in any city you do have something like, let's say you did have a cigar lounge as a use type, because you wanted to be very specific, and I would have to, and I think I know where you're going with this, but I have to run it by the city attorney, because sometimes a use is just a use, no matter how you word it, it applies to everything. But if you had a cigar lounge listed as a use, you could have a definition that had a requirement, so a cigar lounge is anything where they sell cigars. And they have, I don't know, 50% of the area is allowed, up to 50% of the area is allowed for smoking. I just don't know if that passes what the city attorney would consider, you know, not excluding other forms of smoking. Usually once it's smoking, there are some exceptions. For example, an adult establishment is usually a verified use and there's an exception.
I think this is a retail use establishment, right? So an adult business wouldn't be a retail use, right?
Not necessarily, there are some that are.
Okay.
So in this case, it's kind of a dual use. I have retail sales and I have indoor smoking and both are uses. So if you have an Ace Hardware and Ace Hardware has indoor retail and they have outdoor retail, those are two different uses. They're regulated differently under the code. Because just because you have one doesn't negate the other, because again, there are uses that could have impact. So an outdoor, so if I have an Ace Hardware and I have an outdoor storage or I have outdoor sales of something, there are visual impacts. So in those cases, despite the two uses, one use requires a conditional use permit to mitigate those impacts.
And then. So regardless of what this establishment or business or another, somebody could smoke on the street. We can't do
There are certain areas in the
it.
city.
Legal, as long as it's legal, obviously.
There are certain areas within the city where smoking is illegal, and there are certain requirements from the state on where you are allowed to and to not smoke, right? So you do have to comply with those. If you were to. The harder question in this case is, if you want to allow smoking, how do you want to allow it? If the mechanism to allow it is, we think it's just a use that's allowed, then it's a use that's allowed and it's gonna be allowed. Because I also don't have a mechanism by which I'm limiting it in zoning districts. If you determine that smoking is consistent with a retail use, then that will be the determination, and wherever retail is allowed, smoking is gonna be allowed. It varies on how you word your findings on what happens in the future. I will say that cities do often get requests for smoking establishments. If this would not be the first. Once there's one, there is most likely to be another.
Yeah.
And so it depends on your wording in the findings, and how you're making this determination tonight is kind of what impacts us for the future.
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear from the applicant, because I think that's the most important, but at the same time, I think in El Dorado Hills, they actually have them. In the El Dorado Hills Town Center, there's a cigar retail establishment that allows smoking. We don't go into the store, but we frequent the area and never seems to be a problem. I don't know, it doesn't seem like there's anything out of the ordinary. It doesn't seem to, because you're next to like I think it's a candy store on one side, there may be a restaurant within a store or two down. As we've all probably been to El Dorado Hills Town Center, right? And it's like, I don't know, I don't know if we can use the fact that it's a hinder, or it would bother nearby businesses, cause that one, I don't know what the parameters are, but it seems to.
I did look up
Very effective.
El Dorado Hills. I can tell you from experience, there is one in the town there was one in the town that I live in,
Yeah.
it recently closed. And that city regulates smoking establishments to a certain area of the city, it's the downtown. They limited a percentage of the floor area. And they had specific requirements for ventilation. So they did have all those parameters and required a conditional use permit. It did operate for quite a while, and it was in a retail area in the downtown, near restaurants and other sorts of uses. But there were some regulations within the code to ensure that there was no impacts on the neighboring businesses.
What's the turnaround, Margaret, for coming back to us with an amended or an ordinance, a way to change the use list to allow this?
The state just changed the law on noticing requirements for music. So, let me look. we could probably make the second meeting in March. The state now requires a 20-day notification period for any zoning ordinance amendments or rezones. So it's used to be 10 days, it is now 20.
And does that need to go to council after us?
We'll have to go to council after. Usually I would take it to a study session first, but if you give me clear direction, we can go right to public hearing.
So total turnaround time, including council?
Council can follow in April, but then it's 30 days to take effect. After the second reading.
So you're talking May.
Yeah, it'll have to go to council twice.
Yeah.
And then 30 days after the second reading, so it'll take effect.
So late May at the earliest.
And I think you answered this, but I just want to make sure I'm clear in my mind. If we were to go down the route where we try to make it an approved use, can it be bundled so that it's a this specific retail shop can have indoor smoking, but just for that specific instant? There's a way to write it or be very, very specific on the use.
Do you mean like, can it only operate at that facility?
No, just for that type of business.
The only way in which I cannot guarantee is I'd have to run it by the city attorney, because there are exceptions where a use is just a use. We can try it. What would help avoid some situations is requiring it with a retail use. Because hookah lounge don't usually have a retail sale, it's just a use. We could word it that way. But there are some instances in which the courts have ruled that you cannot make certain exceptions on uses. So for example, I can't say no chain restaurants allowed in Plymouth if we allow restaurants, right? So there are some exceptions. Smoking is just such a unique one. I feel like we could craft it in such a way that it would eliminate some others. And then, you know, we'd have to decide, do you wanna allow it outdoors on a patio? Do you wanna allow it with a bar? But that would be direction you could give me to speed us along, if you wanna go that route.
Any other questions for the planner? All right, let's see, well, first we have a speaker card here. For Cameron Begbie. Cameron, would you like to come up and speak?
Chairman, you might want to listen to the applicant first.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
that's
go ahead. Let's hear from the applicant.
Can I bring that up to somebody who's on?
Sure.
Okay. Commissioners, hello, my name is Taylor Rutledge, the owner of the Cedar Spill, which is a proposed cigar lounge that I'm trying to open. I don't know exactly what information you need or want to hear from me, but I figured I'd give you an overview of what it is I'm trying to do, so you have a mindset of it. And I don't know if any of you have ever been inside of a smoking lounge or a cigar lounge, so to speak, but I've been in several throughout the state. In different countries and in different states as well. And California obviously is very special because we have very special laws that limit just about everything we do, to include smoking. So what my idea is to have a cigar lounge where patients come in, there's leather chairs, there is a place where they're able to find quality cigars in a good humidor that maintains the proper humidity, the proper temperature. This is not an establishment where cigarettes are sold or to be smoked. This is not an establishment where people just come to smoke and leave. This is a retail operation for quality tobacco. There's not gonna be any kind of hookah at this establishment.
I'm not gonna be selling any smokeless tobacco either. The primary function is to sell cigars, pipe tobacco, wood pipes for pipe tobacco, and the accoutrements that go with that, such as lighters, cigar cutters, cases, etc. I only got to see and hear the director's response today. So I haven't been able to really go through it a lot. There were some things that she said that I wanted to bring up that I thought were either misspoken or maybe I don't have the understanding is how the municipal code works. But in my purview of the municipal code, and I don't know if we'll be able to read my response. In my review of the municipal code, it would be that my business falls under the use of retail general. And in that definition, it says that a retail general is stores and shops selling single and multiple line of merchandise, including bakeries, clothing, accessories, collectibles, general goods, drug and discount stores, dry goods, florists, and house plant stores, gift shops, and the list goes on. What I want to draw your attention to is dry goods. That is a grocery item which is defined as things such as tobacco, flour, sugar, coffee, etc. And that is why I believe that I fall under that definition, and the use is actually already permitted and allowed. When the director spoke about my business allowing people to smoke indoors, yes, it is, but it's not the purpose of the establishment. Smoking indoors is not allowed in California. You're not allowed to do it. Except where the California Department Clean Air, so the Clean Air indoor laws list specific instances where it is allowed. So this means that when the director states that if you allow this, you have to allow indoor smoking in all businesses, that's incorrect. You can't. State law doesn't allow it. They won't let you do it. To smoke indoors, there's several listed items, probably 10 on here. But one specifically that I want to read is where smoking is allowed indoors is a retail or wholesale tobacco shop. And this is from the California Clean Air Indoors fact list for 2024. And so they say that where it is allowed is in a retail or a wholesale tobacco shop, which are business establishments that have the main purpose of selling tobacco and tobacco products and smoking accessories. The way it appears to me is that this is already an allowed use. I'm following a permitted use that's listed in your municipal code. And state law says that it's okay because my business is only doing that. When the director spoke about impact as far as smoking on patios that would have a negative effect. Unfortunately, I guess, and for her case, is the state already allows that. Smoking is allowed on patios, and to include patios in restaurants and other open air patios. Where it's not is when a city has taken steps to already establish that is not allowed. And reading the Plymouth Municipal Code, I haven't found a place where the city disallows this or has further restricted it from what the state already restricts. I also want to touch on the point where most cities are moving to prohibit smoking and that they have there are cigar lounges that are approved have a separate area for the retail section versus where the smoking occurs. I'd be curious to know which lounges those are. I haven't seen them. I know that they exist, but I was wondering which ones the director visited or saw. Because in my travels and in my experience, I have not seen that. In all cases, the only separate part is where the cigars are stored because it's inside of either a walk-in humidor or an enclosed cabinet. So with that, I'll close. I just want to kind of give you an idea of what my idea and vision is of a place that people can enjoy playing quality tobacco. It's not gonna be a rowdy place. It's not a place where cigarettes and other things like that would be. I wanted to touch upon the current laws in California that smoking is allowed unless the city prohibits it, which I haven't seen the city does. If you have any questions for me, I'd love to answer them for you.
Yeah, I mean, what's your plans for, you're in a building that you share with the restaurant space, or
I'm sorry,
the building you share with the restaurant space,
Yeah.
the share wall. How are you gonna mitigate smoke issues between your side and theirs?
that's a good question. So when I looked at the location, I was specifically interested in that because in my communication with other, cigar establishments and smoke shops, that has been one of the issues that they've had, where if they're in a block of retail space where there's several units, usually a landlord won't rent space then because the air ducting is connected to all the buildings. So that's always been an issue for cigar lounges, is finding a location that would allow that and where they're not gonna be negatively impacting their neighbors. At my location, the section of the building that I'm rented is completely hemostatically sealed off from the rest of the building. There's no shared ducting, there's no shared ventilation. There is a door with a pass-through, and I believe it's currently sealed off. And if it wasn't sealed off well enough, I'd be more than happy to, for my own cost, just seal it up more, not to be a hindrance to the neighbors. I need to be a member of this community, a partner with next door. I've spoken to the next door people, Chris and
Rachel.
yes, and I don't know if whether he's just being nice to me or not, but he seemed to have any issues with the fact that the cigar lounge was going or was proposed to go there. So in the event of any smoke leaking in, I would seek to fix it, but I don't see how it would be possible because there's no shared ducting at all. They're both completely separate.
Is there any, and there may be already in the building, like ventilation that would suck air out and distribute it to the.
No, and so my plan is not to actually vent out any cigar smoke. So one thing I can't stand, as an avid cigar smoker, I can't stand going into a lounge that's full of smoke. It's just not pleasant. Nobody I know likes that. It's not enjoyable. Cigar lounges that are dirty, like there's one in another city that I just choose to not go to because it's not a pleasant environment. So my plan is to have what's called smoke heaters. They're giant big ventilation systems that clean the air themselves without ventilating anywhere, recirculating clean air. That's just the cost of doing the business, and for me, it's imperative that my shop be clean air smoking area.
Just to respond to the initial we talked about is retail establishment, and I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the retail part of it would be something that would be approved. The issue is the smoking part, and I think, and I don't know a lot about this, it's state law versus the city ordinances. I think that's kind of where it goes. Statewide, but maybe not in the city. But I think if you did do the smoking, then this issue would be approved. It would be approved use.
Yeah, and the part I take concern with, or what's troubling me, is that yes, I am a retail store, and so people don't have to smoke to come to my store, but it's currently permitted under state law, and where maybe I'm not finding the connect is I don't see where it's not allowed. The law is defined by the state currently for this topic. When cities want to do something different, they usually enact something that restricts it further. It's kind of like, when you have a policies usually either, supersede laws or they go into more strict requirements in the law. I don't see that. So that's where maybe my confusion or misunderstanding is, but as far as I can see, you don't have to smoke to come into my shop. I would never make someone smoke if they don't want to, but if they want to, they're allowed to currently.
So if we were able to try and fast track something to actually get this to be a permitted use, are you in a lease or where are you at on that? I mean, would late May destroy your plans for opening in Plymouth or
It might.
or would you be able to open doing pure retail pending this getting straightened out?
There's a lot of questions there that I would have to ask the person who I'm proposing to rent the building from. Right, they're sitting on an empty space waiting for it to be used. And I've been trying to do this since just before, well, I think it was November when I first put in my application. So they've been sitting on an empty space, kind of waiting. So I don't know, I don't know what that would bring. And I'm doing this, it's not like I'm sitting there with the loan waiting, ready to go. This is a hobby business for me. This is something that needs to make the money to continue its existence. So I feel like a cigar lounge needs to be a cigar lounge and not just you can buy fine quality tobacco here. And if people don't have the opportunity to experience that, I don't know that it would be successful, nor I know that I would really want to do that, to be honest. They could just go get their cigarettes from Plymouth Trading Post and, I don't know, or just continue ordering online. I'm going to see in Elwood Hills or some of the 4 tobacco lounges in Folsom, which operate just fine in Folsom in various areas of the city. So I don't know. I don't know if that would hinder my plans or not.
Is it possible to approve the retail part while working on?
Yeah,
The
I mean,
rest
we
of it.
can issue a business license today, oh, sorry. That's right. We can issue a business license today for a retail shop, it's the indoor smoking, and we have a different interpretation in the code. Indoor smoking is not the same as retail, right? So he starts selling tobacco and accessories and whatever the case may be. And as a point of clarification, while the state has some laws for smoking and tobacco sales, they do have their own laws. They do not trump local laws. So a city can't prohibit the sale of tobacco if they wanted to. You can make that a prohibited use. You can also have specific requirements like conditional use permit. And the way our code is set up is that if the use is not listed, it's not permitted. So that is where in which we're getting into this weird slippery slope where if we start saying, if the use doesn't kind of make sense, it's allowed, that really removes any purview we have on those things. So businesses aren't specifically not allowed in a single family residential district. They're not allowed because they're not listed. That is kind of the area that we're getting into with this. And I realize that it is a time involved to amend it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So were I to be approved of a business license to sell tobacco as a retail store, what would currently stop me from allowing my patrons to smoke inside when state law allows them to, and there's nothing in the news code that says they can't?
Because the municipal code is written in a way that you can only do what it specifically says you can do, so therefore you can't. That's basically what it is. Correct, Erica?
Well,
So, sorry.
I'm sorry.
my
Go ahead.
question was, if I'm approved for a business license to be a retail store for tobacco retail store, what prohibits me now from allowing my patrons to smoke inside when there's nothing in the municipal code that expressly says you can't, and state law says you can't smoke inside except in the location which is a cigar lounge?
Because again, this is where we get into it's a use. And if you start operating smoking in there, I can operate it in anywhere else where retail sales are allowed.
And basically the way our code is written, unless it's a specifically allowed
Yeah.
thing, you can't do it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this question this topic, let's say, has far-reaching complications that is not necessarily fair to him, but impacts the city in a way on the use list is specifically established as, and these are the permitted and conditionally permitted uses. Excuse me, and sometimes we do say not permitted because there could have been some gray area. But we say if it's not listed and it's not somewhere, it's not allowed. And that's the way that use list operates. To say that a specific use is the same as retail makes it the same as retail forever. To say that a specific use is not listed, so therefore we're going to allow it, makes all the uses that are not listed, I have to start allowing. Because the first question the city attorney asked me when we were looking at this was, Have you ever allowed a use by right on that use list that's not listed? My answer was no. So it does establish precedent, which is hard, it's, I understand it's very hard for a business owner. Because they have the business that they'd like to operate. And as your planning director, I know the consequences of some of these things and I've seen them firsthand. And it's an impact on the city.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of be, just kind of dumb down for how I look at it, it'd be almost like a grocery store that sells tobacco, under that theory, someone could buy cigarettes in the store and smoke in the store. Because they're selling tobacco, and tobacco, as you said, is allowed to be used, smoked indoors with the state. But we can't smoke a cigarette in a grocery store.
Correct, because it sells food, it's not a cigar lounge. So and I'm as respectful as possible, I'm just clarifying that it's very different, that for them to do that, you have to have a private smoking room, like she was speaking about earlier, because there's other factors that go into it. They also sell alcohol, you can't sell alcohol and tobacco, and consume tobacco in the same location. So for them to do that, it's illegal, they couldn't do it. They would have to have a separate private room. And I actually don't think they could because they have a liquor license, so they wouldn't be allowed to have something indoors. Same with the gas station, they can sell tobacco, but they can't smoke indoors because they're not a cigar lounge. They sell food, they sell liquor. So I guess my next question is, what makes smoking a use?
The law behind what constitutes a use is very difficult. I'm gonna try to summarize it. A use is anything you do. A use is I'm selling tobacco. A use is I am operating a community care facility. A use is I'm operating a restaurant. Everything you do is somewhere listed as a use. So it's the sale of something, it's the consumption of something, it's the preparation of something. It's can be further defined by some cities where maybe say prohibits the sale of liquor, period. But anytime you have something that is not identical to a use on that list, so while for you and your business, the smoking is incidental to it, but is a specific use. It's likewise, I can open a flower shop and an adult bookstore within one business. Those are two separate uses. And again, adult entertainment's not on our list, it's prohibited, so right now it wouldn't be allowed, but a combination of uses and exactly what you're doing is how we look at it. The example of Ace Hardware, outdoor storage, that's if you're selling stuff and it's outside, you say that's retail. Why does this person need a permit? It is an entirely different type of use, right? And it's just the way a city establishes both their zoning ordinance, how it's written, how the uses are established, how uses get determined. Every city is different. I will acknowledge that. This city is, the way that we do it is any operation of anything has to be within the uses that we've established, and so it's just a different use.
Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Okay. Anything else you forgot to tell us earlier that's coming to your mind?
Probably when I get out the door, or if I see them, probably, but.
If you're sitting over there and you think of something before we're done with this item, come back up. I'd like to hear more. So now move on to public comment on this. All right, we do have one speaker sheet from Cameron Benefit.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Cam.
Turn it off.
Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Cameron Beck. We operate a business on Main Street that isn't to everybody's liking. Not everybody is a patron. Not everybody, it's a firearm shop, and I think we've done a pretty good job of becoming good neighbors and stewards of the city. I get asked the question a lot, why I open in Plymouth, and I'm raising my family here, I'm raising my boys here, and we're committed to the city. But it almost feels like the city puts up roadblocks for anybody else that wants to be committed to it. And I've heard a lot of reasons to say no, and it feels like we work really hard to say no in this city versus, okay, how do we navigate this, how do we do this? You know, we have an outside entity that's not a stakeholder make decisions in interpreting how we operate our city, and if you notice, there's not a lot of people lined up to open up shop in Plymouth. We work our bandies off to bring attention to Plymouth, to bring attention to our business. And we're proud of what we've done, but we struggle, and we talk about it every day, how do we do if there's somewhere else with more traffic? And we have somebody that's willing to invest their money in their city, we've gone at length and talked about how you can partner in the city, as far as, you know, donating and, whatever you do to publicize the city. And if there's a way to get a variance or a special use permit, I'd encourage you guys to do it, because we don't have a lot of people lining up, and Plymouth is dead. When I first started opening up, I spoke to somebody who is a longtime resident of the city, who said, a gun shop is not how I imagine my Main Street. Well, if you imagine your Main Street dead, you're making it. I mean, you've reached your goal. And I don't wanna see Main Street dead, but we can't be the driving force, us and, you know, one or two other businesses bringing revenue to the city, bringing attention to the city. I know Taylor, he's a public servant by day, and he would be a good steward of the city and carry our name well and bring other people to Plymouth's attention. So I encourage you guys to, if there's a way to make it happen, make it happen. And we'll go from there. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else with public comment? Nobody else? All right, we'll close public comment. Oh, thank you. And it's time for us to discuss this. I would like to say that I think this is a great business for Plymouth. I think it, you know, the issue is when they conceived these codes, they were thinking traditional retail on Main Street. And I can talk back to 25 years ago when the city council meetings here, where people wanted their butcher shop back and their pharmacy back. It's not happening. So the city needs to pivot and find a way to bring in businesses that complement what we have going on in the area already. We have, cigars go with craft cocktails, which we have going on at the hotel and Taste. They go along with fine food and wine, which we have at Taste and in our wineries. And also next door to where you're planning to put your place in, at Chris and Rachel's place. So I think it's a fantastic thing for downtown, but I do understand that it's a pivot from what we have in our code. And I'd like to see a way for us to be able to pivot this without putting the city in a precarious position.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we need more retail businesses. And if that, I see nothing wrong with a cigar retail lounge that has smoking. I do think we need to make it official by amending the city municipal code to allow the specific use. I do think that should include that this ventilation, some type of ventilation in the interior, which the applicant mentioned he would be favorable to or is planning on doing. Again, I've seen these personally operate in other cities. I think they're probably more common than we think. Right, I don't smoke cigars myself, but I have seen them around, like at El Dorado Hills, Folsom, etc. Other cities that I've been to, not just in California, but in California, right, which it does have a tendency to be a little bit more difficult to do business in some cases. So I think we need to figure out how to make this work. As an applicant, again, if there was a way you could start your retail shop without the smoking, I certainly wouldn't recommend or encourage at all opening the retail establishment with the intent to have smoking without it being approved. I would just certainly don't think that would be the case. That may cause other issues. So with that.
Yeah, and I would agree with Mike and Bill. I think the use and the idea of the business is a good fit, and I think that they do go hand in hand, selling tobacco products and having the smoking lounge. I would support that. But we also have responsibility to the city to make sure that we do things correctly. And like everybody else has said, if there's a way that we can do it and we can get a fast track so that it can be approved and approved use, I think that's the strategy that I would like to see us go.
So I'm seeing here that you have 3 out of 5 planning commissioners, potentially 5 planning commissioners that are behind this. We can't speak for the city council, but I do believe that based on the discussion here, if this were to come up for a vote for a change in the ordinance or change in the uses, it would pass. Again, can't guarantee what the city council would do. So is it possible to, like we kind of talked about, to grant him his business license to open his retail so he can start getting rolling, and then we direct staff to come back to us at, what was it, the second meeting of next month?
I have to double check the dates of publication, but I'm pretty sure it's the second.
Okay, so because realistically, like we have another business that's trying to go in, which is also within the village, what is it, village commercial, that's also under the historic overlay and all that, and they're going through a whole lot to change things so they can open. It takes some time, and it's taking them a lot of time to get through the process. I think we could do this a lot faster. I mean, like super fast compared to that. And you would have the support of this body, I think, to do that. I don't want to discourage you and put, when you're trying to open a business, there's time constraints and things you want to do, and there's the possibility of losing your lease. But trying to find a balance here to get you open on Main Street is, I think, what we want to do, but we want to do it while protecting the city as well. So somebody can't open something that is just completely off of what the values of the city are downtown. That's different from what you're doing, which is, I believe, right in there with the values of the city.
And I can tell you that as soon as the planning commission takes action on your ordinance, I will do everything I can to fast track it to council.
We don't have a 20-day limitation on council, it's just planning commission for some strange reason, I don't know why, so. It's not like 20 days notice and then we gotta do another 20 days notice, so we'll get a little time savings in there. But yeah, if this is your direction, and I'm gonna ask for very clear direction. That will help speed it along. But one thing I want you to think about then is, if we're requiring a conditional use permit out of him, it's gonna have to come back to you. And that's, the time involved, so factor that into your decision. You can make it an administrative use permit if you wanted to, with parameters, or you can make it just permitted with parameters.
What's the fastest?
If you wanted to require permits, the plan could double check it. Administrative use permit, we usually approve them in a couple of days, and right now I think they're like $50. They're not very expensive. Conditional use permit is by far more expensive.
With the administrative use permit, there's the parameters on it.
So my recommendation, because I think it sounds like you want us to amend the code to allow smoking, I would like you to give me very clear direction on what parameters you want. So if you want a parameter that has to be involved with a retail use, if you want a parameter that it has to be X, Y, Z, whatever you might think, if you want there to be ventilation, if you wanted to limit hours of operation, whatever you think that would make you feel comfortable in it, I would like you to tell me so that we could we're going to hearing and then we get to go to the city council, so we're not amending anything. The benefit of requiring a conditional use permit is the information that I get on a business license is not very much information. I don't know if you've seen one, but there's really no information. And if I require a conditional, an administrative use permit, I get to have their business characteristics in more detail. And if there are parameters that we require, I can condition it that way. And I also make it revocable should they not comply with the municipal code or with the conditions of. Now, in any case, even with an administrative use, conditional use permit, I can elevate it to the planning commission if I have concerns. So pretend it's not him, pretend it's I don't know, someone wants to go next door to him and operate. If there was something about that business that really gave me cause for concern, I could always elevate it to the planning commission, so there still is that opportunity.
And does an administrative use permit address the issues of people coming in and using that as a opening to do other things? Will it still be specific to?
So my recommendation to you would be if you wanna make smoking a very specific type use. You tell me where you wanna allow it and what zoning districts. We will make it a use and a definition. And then you are going to tell me if you want any limitations on it. So it has to be a retail use, it has to be a percentage of the floor area, it has to be ventilated or just allow, we're not concerned.
Percentage of the floor area is not what you had in mind, right?
Probably not. I would say that.
Smoking that corn.
And I can't speak for everybody else, but I certainly would want something specific, if we're going to allow a use. I mean, I'm not saying it has to be floor use, but at least enough for us to have some control of what goes in the city.
Yeah, and can you make it like you said, retail, can you make it single retail use, like, i.e. tobacco retail store? You can smoke in.
Yeah, so what we could word it as is an indoor smoking establishment is one that is indoors. One that must be conducted in conjunction with the retail sale of tobacco, both for on-site and off-site consumption. So that is more of a retail use rather than you must just purchase it here and use it here. We could word it in such a fashion that.
I like those, and then I would propose adding some sort of ventilation. Or I don't know how that would be worded, but some sort of ventilation.
I'd have to figure that one out, but we can. If everyone agrees to that.
Yeah, I think the criteria that you just explained to us is really good and specific enough for me.
And would you, I'm not sure if we would have to do this, so if you were at an establishment where you did have shared HVAC systems, would you need to have a separation?
And that sort of requirement is the most. The problem is while one business may operate above board, there's potential that another business operates not, right? And so that's why the zoning ordinance is designed the way it is, because you have to. If there's no requirement, I can't force someone to do it, and not everyone is going to do something different.
Yeah.
Realizing that this is a use that the planning commission would like to have, and we can make it work with any other uses, and I think that we can do a study session in the future too, if you would like to, on the uses that are allowed in the downtown. Code was amended, I think, in 2014, it's 10 years later, it's probably a good time to see if it's working for the downtown area. But that would be later, because we wanna fast track this for him, if that's.
And then another question, on the conditional use permit versus the administrative use permit, you said cost is one factor, so it's not really a timing thing, right?
It's both, because the conditional use permit goes before the planning commission, so there's noticing involved. So it's a 10-day notice period, obviously you have to have an available meeting, so there is more time in it. If you wanted to do it that way, we could probably do a sneaky way in which. Don't say that. He comes before you with the conditional use permit at the same time, but the approval is predicated on full adoption of the ordinance. That's a kind of a weird run around it that would save him some time. Or he'd have to wait until after it's fully adopted. But again, for any other business, it's also a time factor for them. And I know with the downtown, a permit that could cost upwards of $5,000. It's $5,000. That's a significant cost.
For a conditional use permit?
Our permit fees are established to cover staff's time, so when you think of a conditional use permit, I have to notice it, I gotta notice it in the newspaper, there's a cost for that. I have to notice it via mailing notices, there's a cost for that. I have to write a staff report, so there's time involved with that. I have to review it, there's time involved with that. She has to review it, there's time involved with that. You have to, we have a meeting here, there's time involved with that. It's really the city's trying to recoup costs. Unfortunately, with some uses are just more intense. And so staff time spent on that is probably in the range of $15,000. And sometimes it's not that intense, you have less amount of money, still significant, and we kind of average out the costs to cover stuff. So the city isn't on.
I'd like to tell the planning commission that I did have the opportunity to read the entire work plan for this business. It's a very solid plan and very thorough. So I don't disagree with what you're doing. I think it'll be a valuable asset to our community. I'm happy for you.
So, let me make a motion that by close of business tomorrow, the planner is directed to issue a business license for the retail tobacco to the applicant. And also, city staff's amended to bring to us amended to the municipal code, allowing the retail use of a smoking establishment for pipe and cigar tobacco within the village commercial zoning area with by operation of a administrative use permit, but requiring that the business mitigates items like smoke to other locations under the same roof through the use of sealing the establishment and using scrubbers or other ventilation to mitigate interference with other businesses.
Can I ask for just one clarification, because you guys have one zoning district, is that the only one you want allowed?
Yes.
Now say that again.
Yeah. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, you need a roll call vote on that?
Commissioner Mickelson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Clapper,
Yes.
Chair Sullivan.
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes.
All right, so that may have not been exactly what you came here for, but we're doing what we can to make it happen. And I want to, on behalf of this body, thank you for bringing your business to Plymouth and bringing this to us as a commission. And hopefully, I know it's just gonna cost a little time, but hopefully we've solved your problem and we're gonna be welcoming you to downtown really soon. Look forward to it. All right, on to item number 7. Is that unfinished business and we have none? And then on to 8, we have new business, the general plan annual progress report.
No one's doing
You guys aren't gonna stick around for that?
it? I know. Come on.
Come on.
I'll watch it.
Okay, Newfield Planning Commission, I am here before you with the general plan annual progress report. The government code actually requires that we prepare a annual progress report of the general plan, including the housing element. And then, we are required to present it to the city council. But we have brought it to you as well, so that you could have a copy of it, ask questions, request changes, whatever the case may be. But there is no resolution tonight, it's just a report. The city is required to submit a copy of the general plan annual progress report to the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, usually referred to as OPR, and the Department of Housing and Community Development by April 1st of each year. There is no required format for the annual progress report. However, there is a specific form that I do have to fill out for the housing element. So just a little refresh, the Plymouth General Plan was adopted in 2009 with the lifespan of 20 years. And just recently, the city council adopted our 6th cycle housing element. On January 9th, we have submitted it to HCD. Margaret and I have been meeting with them today, and we are looking at great sign. Pleasantly
Well done.
and excited. There are 7 elements within our general plan. Because while you're required to have a specific number of elements, you can combine some, you can add some optional ones. But we have 7 elements in our general plan, and that does include plans. The purpose of the annual progress report is really to take a look every year and provide the opportunity for the public as well as the planning commission and city council to see where we are with the implementation of the goals and policies or actions in the general plan. Within that framework, we can identify if there's any areas we need to shift or refocus on. And in terms of both the city and the state, it's really looking at, in terms of the housing element, how we're meeting our regional housing needs allocation numbers. So there's only actually been a few amendments to the general plan, and the reason I'm including it today, and I wouldn't normally do it, is because we have actually never brought forward the annual progress report, even though we were required to, so this is new. So most of our amendments that we have had are to amend the housing element, because we have to update that more frequently, and that's set on the schedule established by the state. We have had a few that are not as part or not a housing element. In June 2015, we had a general plan amendment to change the land use designation of a 13.2 acre parcel from auto urban residential to high density residential. It's required by the housing element. Again, on that date, we amended the general plan land use map to comply with an action item in the housing element to change the land use category. And then in 2016, we approved amendment to the general plan land use map to redesignate a 6.27 acre parcel to high density to, again, comply with the housing element. So for the most part, the amendments have been for the housing element. When you see a significant number of amendments where people are changing their land use designation for whatever reason, that would be a sign that things aren't working very well. But in this case, we really haven't had too many. We do have 2 current applications that would involve a general plan amendment. One is ARCO gas station, they require a general plan amendment. And then one would be for Greelage Ranch to redesignate a portion of their site. But that's very much in the early planning stages, so while there will be a general plan amendment, I can't say for certain what. This year, major development applications that we have both approved and are currently looking at are the 49er Village site modifications. That was staff level review as permitted by the code. It's to change their check-in area. They're removing a few RV slots and they're changing some of the landscaping. That was approved. We also have the Veterans Park mural modifications. Again, staff level review, that's been approved. And then 2 significant projects are currently under review. Again, the ARCO gas station convenience store, completion of some modifications to the CEQA document is currently underway by the consultant. Once that is done, the city attorney will review, and then hopefully we will be able to submit for a public review period, again, as required by CEQA. And then Greelage Ranch is a residential development next to Zinfandel. And they are proposing 299 residential dwelling units, plus accessory dwelling units. That is in the very early stages of planning. And then one that I forgot to put on this list is also an 88-room hotel that staff is currently reviewing and just provided comments on. So that is also in the early planning stage because they will require a review under CEQA as well. Greeley Ranch has been a project for several years, but they have adjusted their project before. It was also an expansion of the 49er Village RV Park. They are now no longer going to expand the 49er Village, but they're upping the number of residential units within Greeley, to kind of cover the area that was to expand 49er Village. So same project area, but slightly different. Staff is working with them on this idea. The EIR that was started under the previous project does have to get modified and council authorized that contract amendment. So right now we're working with applicants so we can move the project. So within the APR, and I'm not gonna go over that 50-page document, but there's 50 pages in it. And what the APR really is each action item listed within the general plan is listed in your APR. And for each action item, there is a status or some comment within it. It is broken up by element, so you can see the first section is the land use and circulation element. And within the document, where we have done it, we've said completed. If we're working on it, we've said we're working on it. For the most part, most of those actions are not done. It is a very ambitious general plan. I don't have cause for concern that we aren't doing most of them. Most of them are quite significant in cost, especially for a city this size. But it is a sign that we are probably moving towards the end of its life because most of those action items, the ones that we could do, we have done. The ones that are so cost prohibitive, we haven't done. So that's kind of the status. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on the APR, the status of the general plan, or any specific action items that you may have seen in there, but you can see that, you know, most of these, for the most part, haven't been done. One significant one that was done was the zoning ordinance overhaul in 2014. But there are a number of other changes that it calls for subdivision standards, for other items that are very expensive to do and just not within. It's not within our budget at this point to do it, but it's also, some of them are just really necessary. We don't have subdivisions coming in left and right. We don't have some of that action items within there. It calls for a specific plan in the downtown. The downtown is very small. Specific plan is very expensive. Well, as maybe something we want to look at, maybe a master plan is more what we want to do. So that's where we're at with the general.
I don't have any questions, but I did want to thank you for the work that you've done on the housing element, on the general plan update, and the work that you did on today. I really appreciate it, and it was very thorough, and I just thank you so much.
Likewise.
No comment.
All right, any other comments or discussion on that? Great, thank you very much. That was an interesting read. Reports. Commissioner Klaproth, any information for us?
Just had a question, and I don't know, this maybe, so the city council approved the change to a municipal code recently, I think regarding hens or. Would that typically need to come through the commission first, or can the city council just by their own virtue and authority just make those decisions?
So anytime there is a change to the zoning ordinance, it comes before the planning commission first, because you are involved in the interpretation, or like tonight, there was an appeal, or if it's conditional use permit, you're involved within those things, you're involved, you take the lead on the zoning matters of the city. The hen ordinance came before you because while we were changing part of the municipal code, we had a minor amendment to the zoning ordinance to list it as a specific use, so that it was easier for people to understand right off the bat whether or not it was allowed, rather than digging within the municipal code. So if I had just amended the municipal code, you would not have seen it.
It went back a second time to clarify the difference between culling and butchering. That was the only reason it went back a second time.
Okay, so it never fully got approved and they were still amending it
Yeah.
to get to approval.
It was fully approved, but there is a minor amendment, and since that amendment was to Title VII. That's not really within the planning commission's purview, it just goes to city council.
So, I was thinking, well, if the city council can just do that, what would be the purpose of the planning commission, but thank you.
Right, Commissioner Mickelson?
Nothing, thank you.
I have nothing, anything from the planner?
I do not have anything, unless you have any questions about our current projects that we're working on.
You did mention the hotel there was some update on that, was there anything other than what you stated?
The hotel has been a project for a while. They have been notified that they need work under CEQA. We did send out an RFP, but they didn't select either of the two firms that actually responded. They submitted plans and they were incompleted back in July, and they just resubmitted less than 30 days ago. We just sent them another incomplete letter. They're incomplete for a couple reasons, and we're gonna discuss it with them, but the biggest hanger up at this point is going to be CEQA. That's going to take the most time. Because we will need to go out for RFP again, we will have to select a firm, we'll have to get the contract approved by council, and then we'll actually have to start the work. And CEQA work takes anywhere from 6 months to a year, if not more.
All right, anything else on any other pending projects?
I have another question. So the Indian casino's going strong now, they're really developing, so there's really no. Since they're not in the city of Plymouth, technically, there's no decision making that we would do as a body.
That's a twofold, one, they're not within our city limits, and two, it's tribal land. So the state limits.
I mean, this might be off topic, but if there is Village Drive as an entrance, which is city, does that bring the city into any of that, or how does that work?
They are working on that right now.
Okay,
They do have their own CEQA document, I can't remember how long ago it was, but we did have it available for the public to look at. But they have a traffic report in there, and they do discuss access and other things.
okay. And then any other city staff? Margaret, Dana, anything? All right, well, the meeting is adjourned at